All right, so in today's lecture, we're going to be talking about the Articles of Confederation, and we'll be exploring the first attempt at a national government after the American Revolution and understand why it ultimately failed. So when you guys are watching this, we'd already have the lecture in class, so this is actually the day before. It's Wednesday. It's great to be back, but let's go ahead and continue with today's short 10-slide lecture. Alright, so we always have in our guided notes, we have essential questions that we're going to ask. So, to guide our discussion today, let's consider the two essential questions that are on this PowerPoint. So, why did the state governments want to create a confederation of the states rather than a federal system following the American Revolution? And the second question I want you guys to ask yourself is why were the Articles of Confederation ultimately unsuccessful? So go ahead and think about that when we're going through today's lesson, and let's continue. So after the revolution, right, we're discussing after. This week we talked about the revolution, but now we're talking about after and how the states adopted two different forms of government, right? So these could be divided into two main types. So we have conservative state constitutions and we have liberal state constitutions, right? So the conservative had bicameral legislators, strong governors, and property requirements for voting. And when it came to liberal state constitutions, it featured unicameral legislators, weak governors, property requirements for voting, and a Bill of Rights. So that's the new forms of government that are happening during this time. And they're obviously both different from each other, right? The conservative have strong, liberal have weak, and the property requirement for voting is definitely one of the biggest ones between the two. But let's go ahead and move on. So before we go on in class, I'd have you guys do a turn and talk. But before we dive into the Articles of Confederation, just take a moment to pause or think to yourself and reflect. And during the turn and talk, it would have been asked you, why would states want to retain its autonomy instead of forming a strong central government, right? So just take the time, go ahead and pause it, write down your notes, and we'll keep going on from here. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Articles of Confederation, right? So while talking about the Articles of Confederation, it created a unicameral legislature with a weak national government, right? So there was no executive or judicial branch, no control over interstate commerce, and limited taxation rights, right? And for each state, only had one vote in legislature, and any new taxes or amendments were required unanimous consent, right? It required that. So go ahead and write down the notes. This is just a brief talking about what it was. But yeah, go ahead and. This isn't highlighted, but the highlighted portion of this lecture will be on Teams. But everything highlighted for your guided notes in case you missed class. But let's go ahead and move on. All right, so the good things about the Articles of Confederation, right? So despite of its shortcomings, the Articles of Confederation had some successes, particularly with land policies, right? As we guys can see on the bottom slide right there, the land ordinance of 1785 set guidelines for surveying and settling western lands with land set aside for public education, right? The Northwest Ordinance established rules for creating new states and prohibited slavery in the Northwest Territory. So, these are some of the good things about the Articles of Confederation. Go ahead and write down the notes. But yeah, go ahead. But that was the two good things about the Articles of Confederation. But let's go ahead and move on. So, now that we reached this point, you go ahead and stop and jot. And what are some of the potential problems the colonies might face due to the weak central government, right? That's what it's asking. We'll go ahead, pause the video, ask yourself, stop and jot, whatever it is you need to do. But let's continue with this lecture. All right, so we have reached the bad things about the Articles of Confederation, right? So let's take a look at the challenges they face. So each state, regardless of its size, had only one vote. Congress lacked the power to collect taxes. There was no executive branch to enforce laws and national court system to resolve disputes. Amendments required all the consent of the states. and the Articles could only form a firm league of friendship, which wasn't enough to unify the nation. So that's pretty much all the bad things are on this PowerPoint as well. Like I said, I will continue to the lecture. And if there's any questions you guys might have about anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Teams or email me. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. All right, so one of the key highlighted events of weakness of the Article of Confederations was Shays' Rebellion, right? And so go ahead and stop and watch the video and answer the questions on your guided notes. Why did the rebellion start? How did Massachusetts respond? And were there any consequences for the nation, right? So go ahead and stop the video and go to the link for this video and complete that on your guided notes. All right, awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue with this PowerPoint. We reached the last slide. This is part 1. There will be part 2 because there is a big chunk on Unit 3 exam on the Articles of Confederation. I decided to split it up. So this is part 1. This is what the district gave me. So let me go ahead and just finish it. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, go ahead and Teams me or send me an email. Okay, so let's get into the last one. The failure of the Articles of Confederation prompts steps towards a stronger government, right? At the Annapolis Convention in 1786, 5 states met to discuss interstate commerce, and they agreed that reforming the Articles was necessary, right? So in the year 1787, at the Constitutional Convention, delegates from states except for Rhode Island decided to reform the Articles or replace them entirely. So this is moving towards the Constitution, right? As you guys can see the title, but we'll go more in depth about the whole Articles of Confederation, what you guys need to know for the exam. But this is just kind of get your head spinning about the information, especially the topics. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture. Complete your guided notes. But yeah, let's go ahead and end this video.